After he passed, my heart is closed. I couldn't understand it. I could find nothing positive about the fact that my brother had died. So I'm riding my horse, and I opened my heart just a little and said, "Thank you, universe, for a beautiful day." And I closed my eyes, and there was my brother. In human form, he was healthy, whole, real. I realized I didn't have to talk, I could just send thought, and it was instantaneous. I looked to the right, and there were my grandparents. And behind them was a hill filled with a couple of dozen people who had passed. And behind him was a golden arch.
My guest today is Becky Austill Clausen, who had a very unusual experience after her brother died at the age of 37. He actually appeared to her in human, solid form, and it opened up medium abilities, and she has been connected to him ever since. It's a fascinating story, and I'm super excited to talk to her. So, Becky, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Laurie, thank you so very much. I'm totally thrilled to talk with you and your followers, and this will be a blast.
This will be a blast. So, I think you're the first person that I've really had on my show who had an experience with a spirit that wasn't in a dream, that didn't look like a spirit in spirit form. But I do have a close personal friend who had an experience very, very similar to yours. So I know that these are very, very real. And I know that these are very life changing. And we talked before this. So we mostly on this channel share near death experiences, out of body experiences. And this is an STE, which is a spiritually transformative experience because it changed many things about your life. So I'm going to let you just share your story in any way that you would like to share it. And then we'll ask questions.
Sounds great. Thank you so very much.
Of course.
I'm really, really thrilled to be able to share what happened with me because my entire life changed. Um, and it was really a very challenging time to be here on this earth. And my brother had come out that he was gay in his 20s. And so I just casually asked him because at this point he was in his early 30s. I just casually asked him, "Hey, David, have you been tested for AIDS?" And we were in Cape Cod. You're going to hear a Boston accent throughout this whole time, but we were in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, walking on a beach. And so I asked David if he'd been tested for AIDS, and he turned away. And I didn't expect that at all. And my heart started to beat faster, and the cloud went or the sun went behind the clouds, and I'm like, my gosh, what is going to happen? Because at that point, David was about 34. So he turns back and he looks at me and he says, "I'm HIV positive." And I feel like a goofball because at that point I didn't know what that was. And I said, "Well, David, I don't know what that is." And he says it goes into AIDS. And there was no one that had AIDS in the 1990s that I knew of that lived. And so I'm looking at my 34-year-old brother thinking he's going to die. And I said, "Well, David, are you getting good medical care?" And he said, "Yes, I'm getting the best I can. Please don't tell anybody. Please don't tell anybody. I don't want to be treated any differently. I'm taking very good care of myself. I'm doing all the precautions, all of that." And I said, "Okay." And so that was sort of an interesting request because what happened on a personal level is that I didn't have a support system. And I was very close with my brother. I'm 4 years older than he was. And I found myself in a bookstore in the New Age section. Now, I'm a science-based occupational therapist. I didn't even know the word New Age. I had no idea that there was even a concept of New Age, and there were all these books that were on after death and the fact that people were living, and I started to read them, and I sent some of them to my brother. So when he passed, we had this basic understanding that some people are able to communicate when they pass, but we hardly ever talked about it. And it was a very challenging time when he passed, of course. 6 weeks after he passed, my heart is closed. I couldn't understand it. I think everything in life is positive. I could find nothing positive about the fact that my brother had died. So I'm riding my horse through a Christmas tree farm, and that day I got the best present of my life. And it was a beautiful day. It was in Chester Springs, Pennsylvania, and um, I was looking at the environment, and we had just had our first frost. Icicles were hanging from the trees, rainbows were around. It was magnificent. And I opened my heart just a little and said, "Thank you, universe, for a beautiful day." And I closed my eyes, and there was my brother. And he was in human form, wearing a black and red plaid flannel shirt, dungarees, and sandals. I had never, ever, ever done, experienced, heard anything like this, ever. But it was real. And there was my brother. And he passed when he was 37. So he passed October 1st, 1995. And it looked like he was about 30. He was healthy. He was well. I started to talk with him and realized within a second that I could just send thought. He was great. I was great. I looked to the right, and there were my grandparents, Abe and Bessie Dole. They had passed about 10 years ago, a couple of years apart from passing, holding hands like they always did. Beside them was our very close friend of the family, Edward, who had passed 6 months ago. Beside Edward was a friend of mine, Holly, that had passed 20 years ago. And she had passed from a motor vehicle accident. And behind them was a hill filled with, oh gosh, a couple of dozen people. I used to play the organ for a church. And so I played at a lot of funerals. And these were people that I had played at their funerals. And I looked back at my brother, and behind him was a golden arch. Now, this arch was not McDonald's. In some of the books that I had read in the time between David told me that he was HIV positive and the time he passed, I had read a fair amount. And it said, if you ever see a doorway, feel free to go through it if it feels comfortable. So this was an arch that looked like it was a doorway. And I looked to my brother and sent a message to him, "Are you going to take me through the arch?" And instead, my grandmother, who's 4'10", takes me by the hand, and we seriously skipped through this arch. And on the other side was a fuchsia colored land. Now, my husband Jeff and I have two wonderful sons, Kenny and Ryan. They're mid 30s now. Well, actually 38 and 36. And they say, "Mom," because as you can imagine, they have heard this story a few times. "Mom, don't say fuchsia." And I'm like, "What do you mean don't say fuchsia?" They say, "Don't say fuchsia. It sounds like you're tripping, sounds like you're high, sounds like you're loaded." And I'm like, "Well, I wasn't." And it was fuchsia. So anyway, I am on this other side of the arch, and it's fuchsia colored land. And I hear my dad's dad, because the grandparents that I had heard were my mom's side. This is my dad's dad, called Gramps, and he had passed about 15 years ago. So I didn't see him, I heard him. And he says, "Get over here," in a very loving, kind, cheerful voice. And Laurie, he takes me by the hand, and we fly. We fly through this fuchsia colored land for what seemed like hours, reminiscing, enjoying being together. It was fantastic. And so all of a sudden, my eyes are still closed. All of a sudden, my horse starts to move. And so I'm on this horse, flying through the fuchsia colored land, holding on to Gramps' hand. And I said to Gramps, "Gramps, I need to go back." So we do an immediate U turn. He brings me right to the golden colored arch. I fly through the arch. I land in front of my brother. There's my brother, my grandparents, Edward, Holly, 2 dozen other people. Everybody's still there. And I'm on my horse that's moving. And I said to them, "I need to go back." And you know what they all said? At the same time, "We will always be here. We will always be here." And I pull up the reins, and I sat on my horse and thought, what just happened to me? And so that's the experience. I can tell you a little bit more, or you can ask me, however you want to do this.
So many thoughts and questions, Becky. First of all, the joy in which you tell your story brought tears to my eyes. Like I feel teary eyed right now talking to you. I got goosebumps when you said that you started flying through the fuchsia covered landscape. I was expecting to hear a story about your brother being solid. I wasn't expecting all of these other people, and you didn't say it. So I have to ask, were your grandparents, Edward, Holly, and the 24 others solid figures as well?
Yes.
Did you ever touch anybody?
Well, my grandfather, I'm holding on to him, and
Right.
grandma when we skip through the arch. And so, but I did my eyes were closed, but this is, I mean, this is full view of everybody, and the scene was luminescent. It was filled with love and joy and clarity. And I can this was, well, it was 95. So this
And
is
we're in
30 years.
2025 just now.
Yeah, we're 2025, 30 years ago. I could visualize it like it happened an hour ago. It was so clear. It's very similar to a near-death experience, which is, spiritual
Yes,
transformative
yes, it's that
experience.
has that different that characteristic. So when you went through the arch, you must have been on your horse because later you were flying through that and you mentioned being on the horse. So the horse stayed solid and went through. Do you think that was solid you on the other side, or do you think that that was your soul and the horse's soul out of the body experiencing that other side?
Yeah, I'm pretty much sure that I was out of the body, experiencing the other side. Because I
And
don't think we take
yeah.
the physical component with us. I think our physicality remains here, and our consciousness expands beyond our physical body.
Well, let's talk about how everybody looked because there is a certain thing that I hear when people have an encounter with a deceased loved one that is pretty prevalent. So let's start with your grandparents. So, did you know these grandparents in life?
Oh, yes. They were
And
over the house all the time. They look
how
just the
old
same.
how old were they when they died?
Mm. Grandpa was young. So he was like, I think maybe 67 because he had just retired and then he passed a couple of years after. And grandma passed probably in her late 70s, maybe early 80s.
Okay, so they weren't young, but what age did they appear to you when you saw them?
That's a good question. They appeared healthy and probably uh 60s. They were very prevalent in our life. Very, very prevalent. And so they were definitely healthy. Edward was healthy, Holly was healthy, David was healthy. Gramps I didn't see, I just heard. So everybody appeared healthy.
And what were they wearing? What kind of clothing? Like clothing from a long time ago, clothing that was current?
It was current. I mean, it was current for them and current for me. Like it wasn't like a past life. It was current for this life. And David again had a black and red plaid flannel shirt, dungarees, and sandals. I mean, it was classic. They wore what was very common in this physical existence for me.
And did all of them speak to you telepathically?
The only ones that spoke telepathically, these are good questions, Laurie. The only one that spoke telepathically was David and Gramps. He was the one that I was flying with in the fuchsia colored land. Grandma, well, she sent love. Grandma sent love. My grandfather was sending love, but we didn't talk. So it was really primarily Gramps who I was flying with and David.
Okay. And so let's dabble a little bit into telepathic communication because I think when people hear this, they are thinking that I say, "Hey, how are you doing?" And the other person hears in their head, "Hey, how are they doing?" But it's more than that, isn't it?
Oh yeah, because we're connected there's our souls are connected. There's not even a second that it goes between the question and the person receiving it. It is instantaneously. And so I was thinking originally in words and after like just a split second when I realized I didn't have to talk because I started talking. And then I realized initially with my brother, I didn't have to talk. I could just send thought and it was instantaneous.
And was it just the thought or were there emotions connected to it as well?
The emotion was love. I wasn't sad. I was thrilled. I was ecstatic. I mean, this was perfect. I mean, here's everybody that I loved that had passed. Here they are, and we're all together. And their presence is when I was getting ready to break the link because my horse was moving and I could recognize that I better pay attention to what was happening with the horse. They all said, "We'll always be here." And since then, I have been able to continue communicating with all of them, especially my brother.
Have you
It's amazing.
have you seen any of them in the solid form since that day?
My brother.
You have. So you had more than one encounter where your brother has shown up in his physical form to you.
Can I tell you what a totally cool story when that
Yes,
happened?
absolutely. Of course.
So we have a really wonderful family, and we always go camping. We go camping in Cape Cod, and it was very, very, very sad, of course, when my brother, who's 37 years old, passed. And so my husband and I, we live in Pennsylvania. We're traveling to Massachusetts, where we have a trailer and RV, and so we're driving through Connecticut. And my brother comes, and I could tell that my brother was here with me. And he talked to me, and he said, "Becky, this is 1 year after he passed. Becky, I'd like to come to camping with you." And I'm like, "Okay." And he says, "But there's a few conditions. If it gets too much for you, I'll leave. If it doesn't feel right, just let me know." And I'm like, "Oh, no, David, it'll be totally great." So he's with me, and I'm able to have a conversation with my husband, and I could just feel David's presence in the back of my brain. So we go camping and we set up, and then David says, will you take me swimming?" He says, "I've really missed swimming," because he's a Pisces, I'm a Pisces, my dad's a Pisces. Pisces is water. And he had a shunt that provided him with pain medication for 2 years, so he wasn't able to go swimming. So he's like, you know my special place. And I'm like, "No, David, I don't know your special place." He says, "Okay, well, I'll take you." Well, I had no idea where this place was, and we were going to walk. And so we're walking through the woods, and he would say, "All right, you're going to go to this campsite, and then there's a path," which I had no idea. So we go down this path, and he says, "Now you're going to take a right," and then we take a left, and we're walking through the woods, and it's this lovely, lovely, lovely experience because I'm with my brother, and we're talking, I didn't see him at that point, but I heard him. He was very present. It was fantastic. We get to a very special, smaller lake. Now, I've been to this place to go camping 50 years. I never knew this place. I never knew this little smaller lake. Well, that's where we ended up. And David said, "Yes, this is my spot." So I had my bathing suit on, and I take off my sandals, and I could feel David's energy becoming anticipatory and excited and happy. And it was incredible to feel his joy just with the preparation of me getting ready to go swimming. And so I step into the water, and the exuberance of my brother as I stepped in further and further and further into the water was incredible. And I was like, "How can I make this so good for my brother?" And so I slowly did this dive into the water. When I entered the water, it was like sparks of joy just shot out of my head and out of my soul and out of my body, and my whole physiological presence was filled with excitement and joy. I mean, that was my brother feeling joyful because he was part of me, and he was now able to physically feel swimming again. And it was magical. Laurie, it was magical. And so that was that was pretty cool.
Becky, that sounds magical. It
It
really
was.
does.
And I had no idea where I was until I got there. And once I got there, I'm like, "Oh." But, even the fact of David leading me down and me trusting that he knew what he was doing and I listened, but I will never forget that feeling of excitement and joy and connection. It was glorious.
So why do you think he was feeling that connection for doing something in the physical that he had probably done many, many, many times? And is it just because the human body is the only way it allows that experience to be in that way?
Yes, and he had not been able to go swimming for 2 years, and he always
Oh,
went swimming because he had that shunt, and
mm.
so he wasn't able to feel that joy,
So
you know
it was more about the end of his life not being able to do something that he really enjoyed versus, "Oh, I'm just swimming again."
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Can we go back to the fuchsia landscape,
Sure.
please? Okay, so you enter through the arch and everything is fuchsia. And so for people who don't know what the color fuchsia is, it's like a hot pink. It's almost like your hair, like your
Right.
it's like your lip color fuchsia, right? It feels like a 90s color, right?
It does feel nice. It's like a brilliant maroon, like a
Yes.
pink hot
Pinkish
maroon.
maroon, okay. So, you go in, and what else strikes you other than the sparkle or the luminescence, I think you called it, and the fuchsia color? What does this landscape look like physically through your eyes?
Yeah, good question. It was nothing but fuchsia. That's all it was. It was a brilliant fuchsia color, but that's where I heard my grandfather. So I didn't see him, but I heard him. So it was a color and then hearing my grandfather's voice and then him taking me and us flying. Fly. I flew. I actually felt like I was flying. I could feel that.
Are
And
you
we were
flying, like, horizontal like
Yep,
Superman? Are you
yep.
flying standing up?
No, we're horizontal, and he was on the right side, and I was on the left side holding hands, and it was
So would this
fantastic.
be kind of like flying through clouds or fog that are lit fuchsia, or just one solid color that's fuchsia? Is there any mountains or ground that you're seeing underneath all of this?
For me, there was not.
Okay. And where do you think you were?
In another realm. We were in another realm and enjoying being together because Gramps had passed about 15 years ago, and I hadn't seen him or heard from him until that point. I knew I was not psychic, I wasn't a medium. I didn't even know about this until I started reading a few books and I mean, more than a few. And I thought, huh, well, that's interesting. None of this ever happened to me, but at least I was open because this can happen to people if you're open.
Right. I think that that's an excellent point. Okay. So you have this experience. They say to you that they will always be there. And then everybody disappears? Do they fade out? Do they're just gone, you turn around? How did that work?
Well, you mean when I came back onto the horse? Yeah,
Yes.
they weren't there. I mean, well, this was, I mean, 30 years ago, and so I work all the time. And it was like I had 2 parts in my brain. I had the work, corporate life, running a business, being a manager, profit and loss, oh, that whole thing. And then I had spirituality. And so it was like I could turn off part of my brain to deal with the day-to-day corporate things, and then I would go into meditation. I have a good story for you about going into meditation and how that whole thing happened. And, and then I would be in the spiritual realm, and so I had these 2 things going on in my life for 20 years, and then after that, then I decided to write a book about this, sold my business because I didn't I had grown the business from a one-person operation to 350 staff, and I didn't want people to think, "I I work with someone that talks to dead people." Like, I just didn't think that was good PR for the business and all that, so I sold the business specifically to have this book published that talks about the first year after my brother passed, and it was a blast. Like, I just was able I had found a teacher. I mean, there's so many stories, but I found a teacher, and Can I tell you a good little story about how it sort of relates to your question
Yeah, sure.
about
Go
what
ahead.
happened? Um,
Sure.
so I'm an occupational therapist, and I'm very involved in the American Occupational Therapy Association. And 4 months after I had seen my brother, I go to the American OT conference, and I had published some stuff and all that, like scientific things. And people said, "Hey, I read your article. How you doing?" I said, "You wouldn't believe what happened to me." And so I would start to share some of these things, and people would look at me and walk away because this is the 1990s, and it was too early. It was too early. At that conference, the last day I sat beside a nun, and I thought, "Huh, this is gonna be interesting. I wonder what the nun thinks about the afterlife and all of this." And within 5 minutes, she said, "Becky, do you know what automatic writing is?" And I'm like, "No, I didn't." And she says, "Well, I went to a conference last weekend, and it was a psychologist from New York, and it's when you're you're writing something and you're connected during meditation, and your hand starts to go across the page automatically, and you're getting connection from spirit." And I'm like, "Oh, no kidding." So the next day, I went home and I was riding my horse, and I had a teacher at the time, a shaman who was teaching me all sorts of wonderful things and how to continue communicating with my brother. Her name was Nancy Ariel. And so she had said, "When you have these experiences, write them down." So I would have all these experiences, and I was sitting in my car the day after I had learned about automatic writing and writing down some of these meditative experiences that I had while I was on my horse that particular day, and my hand started to move across the page. And I thought, "Oh my god, I can either freak out and have it probably stop or go with the flow." So I decided to go with the flow, and I wrote, "Who are you?" And the answer was, "I am love." Now, at that point, I didn't know anything about love except the love that I had for my family, my husband. Like, I didn't know that our entire universe could be built on love. I didn't know that. So I said, "Love?" And I put a question mark. And it was a male presence. And he says, "My name is Lot, Lot." And so Lot gave me quite a bit of information. Um, he was talking in a poetic fashion initially, and then he would just give me all this information, and he came the next day. So he kept coming. Lot kept coming, and I would have my yellow pad, which I always have, and be writing down all these things, and I was shaking my hand because it comes fast, when this information happens. A lot of times it came fast, and after 5 days, I had pages of information from Lot, and it was all, about how the world happens and what can we do, and very interesting, it wasn't hard to understand information, and Lot says, "Becky," what do they call me? Rebecca. Rebekah, which is different than how I spell it, but it's sort of an older way to spell Rebecca. "Why don't you use your computer?" And I'm like, "My computer?" Like, it just seems so incongruous to be typing information from this soul, from the universe, with a computer. I just couldn't understand it. He goes, "You're an I was a fast typist, 90 words a minute." He says, "And it'll be easier for you." So I go downstairs because I was home. I go downstairs, bring up my computer, I was at the dining room table, put it on the dining room table, close my eyes, put my hands in ready position, and got like 10 pages, single spaced, of all this information from Lot. And Lot came every single day for like 3 months. And then after 3 months, I mean, I had about 1,000 pages of information it was very similar to Neil Donald Walsh, Conversations with God, like that. It was very similar. And and so after about 3 months, he says, "I'm gonna be leaving you now." And I'm like, Why are you gonna leave?" And my husband used to sit right beside me, and he'd say, "Becky, ask him this." And I'm like, "Jeff, you can ask him yourself." And he goes, "No, no, no. You have the connection, you ask him." So I type them, whatever. And we get these very understandable answers. And so Lot had said, I'm gonna leave you now because there's all these other spirits that wanna talk to you." And so it's really been fascinating, Laurie, to have. Like, I've got 4,000 pages of information from all different types of nature spirits and other entities and all these beings that communicate with me, and it's now recorded because I've got all this. It's recorded in writing because I've got all this jazz. But it's just a nice validation for what happens.
This is fascinating. Okay, so we're not going to brush over that Lot told you how things work and kind of the why we're here. So I need to go back to that. Do you remember what he said specifically about that?
Yeah,
And
it
again,
was.
he's coming. Did he say he was loved because that is the universal language and he's
Yes.
speaking through that love that we all are?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, that's what it is. Everything
Mhm.
that I have learned after dozens of years of doing this and it took me 20 years to find the courage to even share this because I thought people would think I was nuts. And
Well, in
that's,
1995, they would have,
yeah,
but now not,
yeah,
right?
yeah, it's been amazing. And Laurie, ever since I went public with this, sold the business, sold the business, marketed the book, my life has been synchronistic and fantastic. Like meeting you, all of a sudden, meeting you. It's like, whoa. It's just, it's
Mine
fantastic.
too, Becky, mine too. Ever since my passed away loved one died in 2012, my life every single day is filled with synchronicities.
Yeah.
Every day, like almost unless I do not leave, although even if I'm in my house, there are things that happen. It's crazy, right?
It's wonderful. But
It's
see, you know what?
crazy, like with air quotes, crazy, not like in
Yes, because
yeah.
thought has energy. And
Yeah.
so I say, well, let's not use the word crazy. Let's use the word fantastic.
But I mean crazy because that's my word that means fantastic.
Yes, yes, yes. Agreed.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, so let's go back to
yeah,
what are some of these
what he
secrets
said.
of the universe that we can share with everybody?
Yeah, and it wasn't really a secret. I mean, he was talking about the heavens above and the earth below and all that. And that's why I'm like, what are you talking about? But it makes sense in a global perspective to realize that we are all connected. I mean, that's the general concept. We are all connected. What you do affects me, affects the followers. Like we're all connected, and this is a this is a rather challenging time to be on this earth. But in my perspective, we have all come onto this earth to help be change agents and to help be light workers. And we're here to help share the love. And that's what Lot talked about a lot. A lot. He talked about that.
Did you have any specific questions that you asked that you got an answer you were kind of surprised by?
Good. That's a good question. I did not have hardly any questions. I was more receiving because I believed all of it. I believed all of it. And I was like, okay, tell me more. And I rarely had a question, and if I did, it was answered so perfectly that I didn't really need to know because my whole soul was expanding in such a rapid fashion, and it kept building and building and building, and it was fabulous. So now, 30 years of doing this, I'm connected at all times. Now, sometimes, like when I'm looking at my computer and doing emails and all that stuff, I'm not as connected as when I'm walking through the woods and just
Oh,
feeling.
nature. So tell us about nature and why nature connects us more.
Uh, it is fantastic. Nature is so healing. I mean, it's so healing. I encourage everybody to just go outside and hang out with a tree or hang out with the woods, particularly trees are very, very communicative. And there's lots and lots of research out these days. Peter Wohlleben is one of the main authors that talks about communicating with trees. And there's scientifically based research that trees do communicate. One of the cool things that happened with me with a tree is that um, my husband and I are visiting all the national parks in the United States. Actually, we just finished. So one of my most favorite,
Congratulations. Like
yeah,
that's a
thanks.
massive undertaking. And I'm a park person too. I love
Oh,
that.
yes, it's fantastic. We just went to American Samoa. That was our last one, American Samoa, but it's really pronounced Samoa and the big island of Hawaii. We just did that a couple months ago. But one of my most favorite national parks is Sequoia National Park. I love sequoia, all the trees. So there's this tree called Tecumseh, and there's a whole background with me and interest in Native Americans. and there's a tree there that honors a Native American called Tecumseh. So I'm walking up to Tecumseh. My heart is filled with joy and love, and it's sequoia trees are wide, very, very, very wide. You can have 21 people with their arms outstretched, and that would be around a sequoia tree. So this is just one tree, but it's excellent in the national park. So anyway, I'm walking up to Tecumseh, and I hear in my head, "Hello, little one. Is that your mate for life?" And I'm like, my gosh, I guess that's me. I'm little one and my mate for life. Oh, that must be my husband, Jeff. And I'm like, yes, that's my mate for life. And I walk up to Tecumseh and I ask permission because I've learned to ask permission because some trees are more responsive than others. And if you, so you ask, you can just ask in your thought, on your mind, is it all right if I put my hands, or is it on your trunk, or is it all right if I lean against you? You'll either get a yes or no answer, so that's fine. But sometimes you'll get a no, and so you just think, okay, fine, thank you, and you don't do it. But when you ask permission, that establishes that relationship and the respect for this tree. So anyway, I asked permission, and I put my hands on it, and it was very lovely, and had a wonderful time, and I thanked him and all of that. 2 months later, I go back home, and we live in Pennsylvania. Sequoia's in California. I wasn't thinking of anything about anything except for my happiness at seeing our big grandfather tree, because we have a lovely, what I call a grandfather tree on our home that we used to live in. And I'm walking up to this grandfather tree and I hear in my head, "Hello, little one." And I'm like, holy mackerel, this tree in Pennsylvania, 2,000 miles away, said the same thing to me that this tree in California said. And talk about communication. Like, that was pretty cool. It was pretty cool. So, yeah, the trees are great. There's lots and lots of work on information on forest bathing. You can get certified in forest bathing. You're enveloping yourself with the woods, and it's very healing and a great place to receive information from the other side. Great place. It's very, very nice.
Well, Becky, since you love trees so much, I need to share something that I know about the sequoia trees.
Oh, cool.
So I interviewed a man named David Miller who had a near death experience where he was visited after his NDE by an angel. He fell asleep while he was writing and woke up with an 8-page or 10-page manifesto that said that he was going to go clone all the ancient trees of the world.
Oh
I
my
interviewed him and we super connected. He's one of my very close friends. And he has an organization called Archangel Ancient Tree Archive.
Oh.
So David and I have traveled together and they have cloned about 175 trees. And there's something I want to share with you about the sequoia tree specifically. It is the largest tree on earth. And everybody thinks that General Sherman is the largest sequoia tree on the earth, but he is not. There were two much larger than him, also in the Sierra Nevada mountain range, also on Native American property. And David got special permission and visited both of them and cloned both of them. The first one is called Waterfall Sequoia. It is 14 feet wider than General Sherman.
No kidding.
Think about that. Think about I mean, you just said 20 arm lengths, right,
Yep.
around
Yep.
that tree. Imagine a tree 14 feet wider. It was down in a ravine growing next to a waterfall. Unfortunately, it was killed in the California wildfires
Oh,
a few years ago. But the other one that is larger than that one is on Native American property. It is guarded 24 hours a day by the Native Americans. And he cloned that tree. He is one of the few white people who were allowed on the property and allowed near that tree. And they've made thousands of clones and given them back to the Native American community. And they've been planted. These sequoia trees have been planted all over the world now. They've been planted in New Zealand. They've been planted in the UK. So they've been transplanted all over. And just because of your enthusiasm with the trees, I thought you would appreciate knowing about that.
I do. I very much do.
I
I
will
love
link
trees.
I will link David's NDE because it's just an amazing story, and I'll put it in the pinned comments so that people can check that out because it is so underviewed on my channel. I released it on Arbor Day when my channel was
Oh,
smaller, and I still can't believe how few people. And he said that trees are antennas out into space and they're
agree.
transmitters. They bring specific energy in and they're energy mediators for us. And just as you spoke about, they're very, very connected and they're connected through the mycelium, right? Through that
Yes.
network. And
Yes.
so not only can they probably connect to each other telepathically, but they also have this mycelium network that they connect through as well. They're amazing, sentient beings, in my opinion.
They absolutely are, Laurie. You are awesome. That is fantastic. I love that.
I knew you would love that. So you began then this amazing ability to communicate, and you said that Lot, the spirit of love, left you, and you began communicating with others. So, who have you communicated with that really surprised you?
Well, I was wondering if I was going to say this because
Yes, you are.
I had an opportunity to say this before and I didn't. So it was, I, I found a teacher, found a shaman, whole story about that. But anyway, found a shaman in January 1996. February 1996 was when I went on a corporate retreat. And so I'm the owner of this business, and there was just three of us. And so I got up early in the morning, and we were in New Hampshire, and we were staying in an A-frame home, and we were staying there for the weekend to discuss profit and loss, human relations, what's our corporate strategy to keep growing the business, all that jazz. So, so I have become in just a couple of months quite spiritual. So I thought, all right, I'm going to go out early in the morning and just give thanks and see, how it is. So I go out and there's a lake, big lake right in front of me, and there was a tree that was overhanging. And I used to climb trees as a kid, and I mean, by this time what am I? Like mid 40s or something. And I had this desire to sit on this overhanging branch that was overhanging the water. And I'm like, Becky, president of this company, is this really what you want to do? But it's 5 o'clock in the morning. So nobody's out there. Nobody could see me. And I decided, yes, go do that. Experience joy. So I go to sit on this branch that's overhanging the water and decided to lie down on the branch. And honest to Pete, Laurie, I could feel the inside of the tree. And I was right there. And it was fantastic. Just the inside and the whole movement of the energy. It was glorious. All of a sudden, I thought, gosh, if I can feel the inside of the tree, I wonder if I can experience the water. And so it was winter. It was February or January, whatever, January, February. And so it was cold in New Hampshire. And so I sent my energy to the water and I could actually feel the ice and I could feel it like even a mile away breaking. Sometimes the ice crackles and breaks and all that. And then I could feel that there was a fish underneath and it was moving very slowly because it was cold. And I became the fish. And so I became the fish, became the ice, became the water, and was having a wonderful time. But I felt there was something calling me from the shore. But I was having this great time being the fish and the water and all of this. And I didn't want to interrupt this, but it was a very persistent call for me to check out whatever was calling me. So I gave thanks to the fish and thanks to the water and thanks to the ice and thanks to the tree and slowly sat up and started to walk on the sand. And what was calling me was a large rock, large rock. So I sat on this rock and realized that I could connect with this rock. And the rock said to me, or made me realize, like I used to skip rocks all the time, that that was not polite. And that sometimes the rocks like to stay where they were. And I should ask permission before I skipped a rock. Like, "Oh, I'm so sorry." Like, I used to skip lots, like hundreds, maybe 1,000 rocks. So I'm so sorry. So I bent down, and I'm not very flexible, but my head was at my ankles, and I'm becoming this rock, and it was so ancient and serene and solid. It was magnificent. All of a sudden, I hear a whistle, and I'm like, "What is that?" And it was my chief financial officer, Bob, and he's a runner, and I'm like, "Oh, it wouldn't be good for him to see me as a rock. This is not good." And so, but I'm still in the midst of feeling this awesome energy, and so I slowly bring my head up and, get ready to stand up, and at that moment, exact moment, the sun rose above the lake, and there was this green flash, and there's Bob, and Bob was about 6 feet in front of me, and he's like, "Hi, Beck, what are you doing?" I looked at him and, I said, and he says, "Are we still meeting this morning?" And I'm like, "Why, yes. What time is it?" And I had been out there since 5 o'clock in the morning. He says, "It's 20 minutes to 9. And are we meeting at 9?" And I'm like, yes. Yes. We're meeting at 9." So he says, "Okay, well, that's good." And so he goes back into the house, and I gave thanks to the rock and immediately went back into the house. And my teacher, shaman teacher, Nancy, had always said, "Write things down." So I'm writing down what had happened, and I had like 10 minutes before I had to leave this corporate retreat. And I drew this picture of a fairy. I drew a picture of a fairy. And for me, well, anyway, it was a fairy, and it had the tall, hat, and it had the curly toes, and then striped legs, and I look at this thing, and I'm like, "Becky, what is this?" And it was on the side of this piece of paper. It had the pointed nose, and I realized I had an instant realization that this fairy was what the green flash was. And so the green flash that came out of the rock was the fairy leaving the rock. And so I was communicating not only with the stone, but also with the fairy. And so subsequently, I have communicated with hundreds of fairy beings, and they are real, and they are fun, and they are joyous, and that's what I told people when I went to the American OT Association conference, and they said, "So, Beck, what have you been doing?" This is 4 months after I had learned, uh, to continue communicating with my brother, and I said, "I met a fairy. I met a fairy." Didn't go over very well. Didn't go over very well at all. But it was real, and the fairies are still around, and they are so fun, and they do come to people that are open-hearted and joyous and filled with love, and it's a blast, and there's a whole section in my book that talks about me meeting the fairies, and they continue to come and all of that. But that's what I said to people. I met a fairy, and I had no filter, which nowadays I'm like, "Oh, Becky."
I love it,
That's what
Becky.
happened.
I interviewed a man who had a near-death experience. He was riding his bike through the woods, and he flipped over on his bike, and he hit his head, and when he came to, there were fairies around him, and he had
Yes.
not believed in any of these things before. I'll put this down in the pinned comment so people can watch that video if they want to also.
Great,
But
great.
then on another interview, I was interviewing a woman. She was in a location somewhere over in the UK. I can't remember where, and she was in a basement. And she told me before we started our recording that people often see fairies where she was. And
Yes,
so
they
we
do.
both said, let's set the intention to see a fairy. You will not believe it unless you go and see it. But a fairy flew past. You can see I was on single view, but I showed in the like I put the double view on so you can see like the shock, and it was captured on camera.
Yay.
And so we have an actual fairy, and I zoomed in on it so people could really see it, but for real, there was a fairy on this interview. So I will link that one as well.
That is fantastic, Laura. You are so fun, and you are bringing forth so much information. It's great. Yeah, and so for 2 people or 3 people or 4 people or hundreds, thousands to have these same experiences, they are real. They're
And I
real.
always say, my experiences confirm your experiences, and your
Yes.
experiences confirm my experiences.
Yes.
Ah, so great. Well, Becky, I would imagine that people who are watching would love to connect with you. So tell everybody how they can do that.
Okay, great. Well, first of all, thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being open. Um, my name is Rebecca. Oh, you probably will have it. Yeah, it's on the screen. But anyway, um, professionally, I'm Rebecca Austill Clausen. And so email is the best for me. And so it's Becky, Becky, at Rebecca, RebeccaAustill Clausen.com. So it's Becky at RebeccaAustillClausen.com. And the book that I wrote that it's really been such a journey. I actually thought I could get kicked out of the OT profession, and it didn't happen. I didn't get kicked out. It won 5 National Book Awards. It's called Changemaker: How My Brother's Death Woke Up My Life. Changemaker: How My Brother's Death Woke Up My Life. And it's been magical. Magical. And so those are a couple of good ways to connect.
Well, Becky, I think you are magical. And we draw to us what we put out there, and you are definitely connecting to the magic. And I want to thank you so much for your part in what you are doing to help wake up the collective. It is so needed right now.
It is needed. And thank you, Laurie. And thank you for all you're doing. And thank you, listeners, for all you're doing. And gosh, if we could all just, with our hearts and our love, sheer love. That's what we need. I mean, gosh, our whole world is in a bit of a tangle these days, but let's share love and be kind and express gratitude.
Love that. Well, and of course, this show is nothing without all of you who tune in to listen and watch and share these amazing experiences. So thank you, everybody, for watching.
Thank you so much. Lots of love, always and forever.
Do you believe that love never dies and you want to hear stories that prove it? Well, hit the subscribe button. You belong here.